everyone, welcome back. And today we're going to talk about this very important topic on storytelling. Now, you're probably wondering, oh, storytelling, I do this with my kids. I heard it when I was little. My mom would tell me stories and you're probably wondering, hey, what to talk about. But you'll be surprised as we go through this lesson and even our class discussion together. You will see this is such a powerful tool to teach, especially Bible stories and Bible narratives. Now, there is a fancy term called orality. It's something that is being done. A lot of research have been shown and done on this topic, particularly understanding how people learn by using orality. So what is orality? Basically, it's the use of speech rather than writing as a means of communications, especially in the communities where people are not so literate, so they're not able to read or write. But you'll be surprised as we go over this video and our in-class exercise and discussion together that orality is not just for people who are illiterate. It's actually many of us prefer this way of learning by listening, by speech instead of written words. Now, some of you might have been, have gone through in your life that, in your culture that is being passed down, is the cultural tradition is being passed down through stories, proverbs, songs, riddles, and poems. And this might be already something in you that you're already very familiar with. This is through the history. That's how your ancestor or your grandfathers or people in your culture to teach about your culture, identity, religion through this type of means. So it's not something that is new to you. But I would love to argue that actually many of us are oral learner. First of all, there's actually over 70 to 80% of the world populations prefers oral learning. And there are two different types of oral learners. The first type is called the primary oral learner, which is people who cannot read or write. And they basically rely on the oral means to gather and to remember any information. So they gather and remember information through hearing. So in their culture, that was through stories, through poems, through different, oral art to transfer any type of information or learning. Now, the second type of oral learner, which is I think most of us maybe, prefer this way of learning, is they are able to read and write, but they just love processing information through audio visual communications. Like people who prefer pictures, not text, not they prefer listening and voice messages as a way to learn as well. For me personally, I'm definitely an oral learner. For me, when I open up a book, when I see the text of the book, I just feel so dizzy and overwhelmed sometimes. So I find it much easier for me to learn through hearing. Even when I learn, I rather having the audio books or pictures, and I draw to help me to remember. This is one powerful way for me to learn. So, there's some of the characteristic of the oral learner. They usually love to engage in conversation, in dialogue when they communicate with others, and they appreciate the style, different oral arts like stories, proverbs, songs, and drama. They learn best through these oral arts. Also, they learn best when they connected with real events, people, or struggles of life, and they prefer what they're doing, what they're learning, really using the lens, the context, right? How is it going to work in my context? Instead of, a bunch of theories and principles, how's the experience from the teacher I can learn from that as well. Also, they easy for them to remember things through stories, symbols, songs, and play rituals. And repetitions is really good for them instead of written words. So either reading out loud or mentioning many times, just keep repeating the sound or the stories really help them to learn. And they also prefer to learn in a group, and they love to participate. Now, if I can see your face right now, would love to ask your hand. ask your hand to raise your hand. How many of you actually prefer this way of learning? I would imagine many of us here would raise our hand and prefer this type of learning. So how do oral people learn? And here is some of the example, which some of these I mentioned already. Storytelling, drama, using pictures and images, music and song, dance, movements, repetitions. Like you keep repeating what is the name of the Israel king, David. So you keep repeating and repeating again. Rituals. Recently, I've been to a seminar. I find it stick to my heart so much. It was a mother's group that from a group in Korea, and I remember every time we end a class, we had a ritual. So the ritual would be either lighting up the candles, symbolizing certain lesson that being kind of discussed in the class, or we would gather together, holding our hands and say something together. So I find it, wow, the process of, doing this ritual together, we actually kind of reinforce some of the important things that we have learned together and really made an impact in my life. And I really find that it's really helpful. They might love doing things together and having common experiences. And I know some of our students, they gone to pottery together as one of the lesson plan in our school. And through that during the pottery experience, they have to write a reflection letter. Reflection paper afterwards to reflect the whole process of how did you experience God in this process of, doing this pottery. I can imagine we're like clay in God's hand and the molding process. And it's such a powerful experience as well. There might be interactive experiences like asking questions, discussions instead of lectures. So there's another form of using, very interactive experiences instead of just having lecture or dialogue that they can see where people are at. You allow people to dialogue with you to whether they will understand what you're trying to communicate. One example being shared was one Mongolian lady asked, how big is the harp of David? How deep is the well? When Abraham servant divides the well, when they herd the sheep, do they just go before or after the sheep? To them, people have different perspective and questions. By engaging in dialogue, you'll be able to understand. You'll be able to understand and where people are at and asking questions. So this is also a very powerful way to teach as well. Poetry, proverbs, parables, symbols, reciting, games, riddles. Now, all these are great examples if we're involving oral learners. And honestly, all of us, if we want to strive to be a good teacher, whether a Bible teacher or just teaching our kids or in your youth ministries or the women ministry or whatever ministry or your Sunday school, we should all consider incorporate some of these elements into our teaching, because in our group, there are people that have different styles of learning. And it's very beneficial if we include some of these into our teaching to make the lesson more fun and that we can teach the Bible in a creative and a fun way. So it's interesting how God also used so many orality in a sense to teach, communicate his character and theology. Now, the Bible itself has over 75% of stories in the Bible, and then 15% of them are songs, poems, and proverbs. And it's funny that it's only 10% is linear teaching, like the letters, like it's very logical, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That the theology is communicated in a very systematic ways. So you will find out, wow, it is amazing how God also used orality to communicate his truth and characters in the Bible. So we also learn from this powerful teaching method. If you have noticed Jesus, all the style that he been, most of the style that he been teaching, he usually tells stories, tells parables, and to communicate God's truth. So as you can see, and human mind also, there are a lot of research done that our mind are tuned to receive stories. Our mind is tuned to really understand stories.